The purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to create a web app using Microsoft Azure. You're going to need to download and install 3 programs. One is Git Bash, one is FileZilla, and the other is VS Code. Create a folder on your desktop that will house the files that you will use for VS Code. As you can see on my desktop, there I have a folder I created. So we're going to open VS Code. And you're going to navigate to the folder that you created on your desktop. Inside that folder, there was a subfolder called My App. And inside that folder, you're working with an index.html file. This is where you're going to input and store the HTML content for your web app. So as you can see, it was not letting me paste the HTML content that I had in a separate text file directly into VS Code. So I ended up having to manually type the HTML content inside of the index.html file. Skipping ahead, you see index.html content is now complete. And we're going to see what it looks like by opening index.html inside of a browser. And you see it reflects the My Web App text there. That was off of the HTML code that you input inside VS Code, and then you saved the index.html file. Now we're going to navigate over to my Microsoft Azure portal. And the reason we're going to the Azure portal is because we want to create a new web app. And during the web app creation process, it'll give us some links, a username, and then a password that we'll use to authenticate from FileZilla over FTP in order to manage our new web app. You see from the menu on the left inside Microsoft Azure, it has a number of items you can choose from. We're going to select New, and you can search for web app. Okay. So there's the web app. We click on web app. All right, and then we click create, and that's going to go through the process of the web app creation process. And so you need to give your app a unique name. Azure will search its own database to make sure that you're not inputting a name for your web app that is already another user has already created. You notice this subscription I chose is free trial. That's to make sure that there are no charges on my account. You also want to make sure to choose the free service plan to avoid any charges if you're going to test web app creation in Azure and to avoid charges. So one other thing you want to make sure to look for and make sure it's correct is the location. So the location, you're going to want to click that drop down and select the instance location closest, geographically closest to you for obvious reasons, mainly for performance. Basically, you're reducing the number of device hops from your physical location to this particular web app that you're creating. So right now we're just making sure that we choose the right pricing tier. There's several of them listed in this particular section. For the purposes of this demo, though, we want to make sure and choose the free pricing tier. And you can see here that there's $0 associated with this tier. So once everything is set, you click OK. Check that box and then click Create. By the way, anytime you want to see what the status is of your app creation or app deletion, you can click on the little bell icon on the top menu, and that will give you the status of the action that you just took. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to create or delete something that you've created. Okay, so Microsoft Azure created the web application. It gives you a URL, a direct URL to your web app. In this case, it's a website, so that's why you have that full URL, and part of the name is what you chose. It's a unique name for your particular domain. And it gives you a couple more bits of information, username information, and you'll use that information to connect to the Azure FTP site. And so we'll launch FileZilla. So this is the FTP client we'll use to connect to the Azure site or your Azure Web App. And it'll give us access to the underlying file system for your site, for your web app. And you can notice your web app properties contains the access information or the FTP information that you'll use inside FileZilla in order to connect to the underlying site structure. And if you ever forget your credentials, it's really easy to regenerate those credentials. So don't worry if you've lost the credentials to your web app, to the underlying file system for your web app, for the site structure. As long as you have access to the credentials for your Azure portal, you can go back into the properties for your web app and generate new credentials. So here we've connected to the FTP location on Microsoft Azure, and you can see on the left side of the screen there's a box there that represents the file hierarchy, the file system on your local system. And then to the right is the underlying file system or site structure for your web app. And you can see that I'm just expanding a few folders to see what the site structure looks like. And so right now I'm just kind of navigating through on the left side of FileZilla. It shows you more of the higher level hierarchy of your local file system. If you were to click on any of those objects there, it would show you the details or the subcontents. The same is true on the right side for Microsoft Azure's underlying site structure. If you click on one of the objects above, it'll show you the subcontents on the screen, the window just below that. So now what I'm attempting to do is locate the root folder for the site, and I'm attempting to drag over the index.html file into the appropriate folder on the Azure site here, as you can see. And the window below that folder shows that it copied over. So it really is as simple as that in order to manage your web app. In this particular case, it was a website. So after we're done managing the site with FileZilla, we'll disconnect the FTP session. And now we're going to take a look at using the full URL inside Microsoft Azure. We're going to check and validate the website content is there. And as you can see, it says my web app. And the reason it says that using the fully qualified URL there is because we copied over the index.html file from our local file system via FileZilla into the appropriate folder for the website inside Microsoft Azure. And that's about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. Feel free to visit any of my channels. This one is Azure in the wild. I also have PowerShell in the wild, Cisco in the wild, Juniper in the wild, so on and so forth. Please remember to subscribe and come back soon.